If you live in the northern hemisphere, there's a good chance you've seen this constellation, and you most likely know it as the Big Dipper. What most people don't know is that this is not a real constellation. It's actually called an asterism. An asterism is a pattern of stars that do not form one of the 88 official constellations recognized by the International Astronomical Union. The Big Dipper is actually just a part of another constellation called Ursa Major, the Great Bear, and this is the story behind it. 2 out of the 3 constellations in this story are visible all year round in the northern hemisphere, but if you want to be able to see all of them, the best time of year is around mid-March through October. Like many other myths and legends, there are many variations of this story, some of which I will mention later, some of which I will make an entire video about someday. This video and series is intended to serve as a guide to the night sky, and I recommend listening to it while you are outside observing these constellations. I will have visuals throughout the video to aid you in finding these constellations if needed, but also for those who just want to watch the video because maybe the weather isn't exactly cooperating outside. Before we get started, I want to share a few stargazing tips that will make following along much easier. First, I recommend downloading a night sky app to help identify the constellations. My personal favorite is Stellarium, which I'll be using throughout this video, but there are plenty of other great options available. Before heading outside, I suggest locating these constellations in the app so you won't need to keep checking your phone later. Ursa Major, Ursa Minor, and Boötes. There's also one bonus constellation I'll mention at the end that isn't really part of the story, Canis Venatici. If you're viewing in the winter, take the time to also find the Pleiades. One of the biggest challenges when stargazing is preserving your night vision. Looking at your phone causes your eyes to readjust to the bright screen, making it much harder to see the fainter stars. If you do need to check your phone, turn the brightness all the way down and enable your phone's night mode. This minimizes blue light, helps preserve your dark adaptation, and allows your eyes to recover much more quickly. If you're using Stellarium, you actually have a much better night mode function built into the app. Throughout this video, I'll do my best to guide you through the sky without requiring you to look back at your phone. That said, sometimes it's simply easier to show a constellation than to describe it. Finally, I want to show you one of the most useful tricks for navigating the night sky. By fully extending your arm and using the hand measurements shown on screen, you can estimate the angular distance between stars and constellations. This simple technique will be very helpful later when I explain how to find each constellation. Just a warning up front, this is not a family-friendly story. I would not recommend listening to this with children present. Viewers' discretion is advised. This story does contain references to sexual assault and other themes some viewers may find distressing. Now, take a moment to orient yourself in the night sky and find the constellation of Ursa Major so you can project your imagination onto the stars. The story begins with a beautiful mountain nymph named Callisto, meaning most beautiful. She was a devout follower of Artemis, goddess of the hunt, and had taken a vow to remain a virgin. One day, while out on a hunt with Artemis and the other nymphs, she was separated from the group. After a brief period of time, Artemis found Callisto resting, both unaccompanied by the other nymphs that were on the hunting party. Artemis approached Callisto, and just as she got within arm's length, Zeus dropped his deceitful disguise. Zeus violated Callisto, despite her resistance, and soon after, Artemis and the other nymphs would discover Callisto by herself. When Callisto saw Artemis, she fled, fearing that it was Zeus in disguise yet again. Callisto, ashamed, never told a soul, not even Artemis, what had happened to her that day. Months later, Callisto was bathing in the river with the other nymphs, when Artemis noticed that Callisto's belly had a small bump. Callisto was pregnant. Furious that Callisto had broken her vows to remain a virgin, Artemis cast Callisto from her following, without giving her a chance to explain herself. Callisto would go on to have a son named Arcas, and Hera, the jealous wife of Zeus, was plotting a way to get her revenge. Only Hera wasn't angry with Zeus, she was angry with his victim, Callisto, for being beautiful enough to attract her unfaithful husband. Hera decided that she would punish this nymph by transforming her into a beast. Callisto's soft hair became a coarse fur coat. Her hands morphed to paws with claws. Her sweet voice became a low growl. Her teeth turned to fangs. Her body transformed into a bear. But Hera did not alter her mind. Afraid that Hera would lash out at his son, Zeus took Arcas and hid him from her. He was raised by Maia, one of the Pleiades, or Seven Sisters, which is another asterism you can see November through March. Arcas was safe in Maia's hands for many years, until King Lycaon held a court feast and sacrificed the young Arcas to the gods over a burning altar. Taunting Zeus, King Lycaon challenged him to raise his son from the dead and make him whole again if he were such a clever god. Zeus accepted this challenge, not only raising Arcas from the dead, but turning King Lycaon into a werewolf as punishment. Zeus placed his son Arcas upon the throne, and the kingdom he ruled became known as Arcadia in his honor. For the next part of the story, we'll need to find the constellation Boötes. If you're following along with the stargazing app, go ahead and locate it now. If not, you can find it using Ursa Major, or the Big Dipper. Start at the Big Dipper's handle and follow its gentle curve away from the bowl. Simply continue tracing the same arc across the sky, and you'll arrive at a brilliant orange star named Arcturus, the brightest star in Boötes and one of the brightest in the entire night sky. Astronomers often remember this with the phrase arc to Arcturus. Once you've found Arcturus, you've found Boötes. The rest of the constellation extends upward from that star in a kite-shaped pattern. Find it? Great. Let's get back to the story. For 16 years, Callisto would roam the forests, running and hiding from the hunters with which she used to roam, until one day, Callisto came across a familiar young man. Callisto did not run this time. Instead, she moved closer for a better look. And as she approached, the young man clutched his spear, ready to slay the beast. Callisto was not looking for a fight, however. She knew this boy. It was her son, Arcas, all grown up. She attempted to speak with him, but all Arcas could hear was a bear's growls as it continued closing in on him. Arcas, not recognizing his mother in bear form, transitioned to a fighting position, believing his life was in danger. As Callisto grew closer, Arcas thrust his spear in her direction. Now let's find the little bear, also known as Ursa Minor. If you're using a stargazing app, go ahead and locate it now. Otherwise, you can find it using the Big Dipper. Look at the bowl of the Big Dipper and find the two stars opposite the handle. These stars are Meroc and Dubhe, commonly known as the pointer stars, because they point almost directly to Polaris, the North Star. Draw an imaginary line from Meroc through Dubhe and continue it about 5 times the distance between those two stars. If you want to try out those hand measurements from before, you can extend your arm with your palm facing the sky and extend your pinky finger and thumb like you're a surfer hitting a gnarly barrel wave. The moderately bright star at the tip of your finger is Polaris. Although it's famous for marking true north, it's also the star at the very tip of Ursa Minor's tail. From there, the rest of the little bear curves away from Polaris with its bowl extending in the opposite direction. If you're having trouble spotting it, feel free to pause the video or quickly refer back to your stargazing app. This altercation between Arcas and Callisto caught the attention of Zeus in the heavens. Not wanting to see his son slay his mother, he turned Arcas into a little bear and swept the two of them into the heavens, immortalizing them in the night sky. But this decision made Hera furious. She asked the Titans, Oceanus, ruler of the great river encircling the world, and his wife, Tethys, mother of rivers, never to allow these two to drink from their waters. As a result, Callisto and Arcas roamed the sky night after night, never to set below the horizon to rest or get a drink of water. Every time we look to Ursa Major, we are reminded that not every story ends in justice. Sometimes it's the innocent who suffer, while the guilty go unpunished. Ursa Major and Ursa Minor are known as circumpolar constellations, meaning they never set below the horizon and rotate around the North Celestial Pole. There are many different iterations of this story. I took a little bit of creative storytelling to combine 2 of them. In one myth, the constellation known as Boötes is actually called Arctophylax, which was another name for this constellation in ancient Greece. Arctophylax means bear watcher or guardian of the bear, and in this myth, this constellation is Arcas, son of Callisto, who Zeus places in the sky next to his mother to watch over and protect her. In other variations of the myth, Boötes is not at all associated with the story of Arcas and Callisto, and has its own mythology and lore as another identity entirely. but that's a story and video for another day. When I think of this particular myth, I like to view Boötes as the scene where Arcas is having the standoff with Callisto before Zeus intervenes, and look to Ursa Major and Ursa Minor as the end scene after Zeus intervenes and memorializes them for eternity. There are also other variations in which Artemis is the one who hunts down Callisto at the order of Hera, or simply hunts her herself, not realizing it's Callisto. In some versions, Zeus does not intervene in time and Arcas unknowingly slays his mother, and others where Arcas is sacrificed and fed to Zeus until he realizes it and resurrects him. The sexual abuse of Callisto, however, is pretty consistent. There are some variations of the story where it is consensual, but nearly every ancient source I could find all stated it was not. I wanted to include this in the story for two reasons. One, because it's true to the ancient tellings of the story and I wanted it to be accurate. And two, because this is a topic that shouldn't be ignored or made to pretend didn't happen. I didn't mean to gloss over this egregious act in any way, though I did have to make adjustments to avoid getting punished by the algorithm. There's also another constellation associated with this story, Canis Venatici, which is the dogs of Boötes. I didn't include them in this story because this is actually a more modern constellation from the 1600s. Basically, there were some mistranslations over the years, causing there to first be a club or weapon of sorts belonging to Boötes, followed by another mistranslation that resulted in this constellation becoming the dogs of Boötes. And since this wasn't part of the ancient story and would have been inconsequential to add, I left them out. One last fun fact, many ancient Greeks actually didn't recognize the Big Dipper as being part of the Great Bear, and referred to it as the plow. In this myth, Boötes was actually believed to be the inventor of the plow, and him and his invention were so grand the gods immortalized him in the sky for his ingenuity. I'm not sponsored by Stellarium, and this video is not an ad for Stellarium. It is honestly just my favorite astronomy program to use, and I highly recommend it. I'll put a link in the description of this video if you want to download it on your computer, tablet, or phone. I hope you enjoyed the story, but more importantly, I hope it made you feel more connected to the stars. Expensive equipment like telescopes are not necessary to enjoy astronomy and stargazing. All you need is a clear sky, a story, and someone to share it with.